Welcome back to another masterpiece of mediocrity. Today, I've got two games for you, both showcasing my incredible talent for questionable decision-making. In the first game, I played like a total noob, absolutely brainless chess. No plans, no logic, just vibes. I was moving pieces like,
"Oh, this move looks shiny, let's play it."
Pure chaos, zero strategy. And when the second game happened, suddenly, I was playing like a wannabe grandmaster. I started throwing in forks, sacrifices, and guess what? They actually worked. It was like I went from a confused beginner to a tactical genius in just 5 minutes. So sit back, relax, and enjoy watching my glorious transformation, from blunder machine to budget GM. As usual, the game starts with e4, e5, standard stuff. But then this guy brings his queen to h5. I swear, this man just watched one of those 4-move checkmate YouTube shorts and thought he was the next Magnus Carlsen. But guess what? I watched the same short too. The only difference is, I actually learned how to defend against people like him. So, I calmly played nc6, protecting my pawn and saying, "Not today, YouTube champion." Then he brings out his bishop to c4. Of course, because that's part 2 of the same viral short. No surprise there. I hit him back with d6, blocking his checkmate idea and also kicking his queen out of my house. And guess what? He panicked and sent his queen all the way back to d1, back to her default spawn point. I guess he only watched half the short and forgot the queen goes to f3 part. But I didn't forget. I knew the next move should be nf6 because that's how you slap sense into early queen players. Then suddenly, he plays n3. I don't even know why. Maybe he felt his bishop was in danger, or maybe his mouse slipped. Anyway, the pawn on e4 was free, but I decided to wait. Instead, I developed my bishop to c5, already dreaming about a future fork on his queen and rook. But this guy, he was committed to chaos. He moves the same knight again to b5.
Huh?
At this point, I realized he's not playing chess, he's just moving furniture. So I said fine, and took his free pawn on e4. Then he attacked me with his pawn, but that only gave me the perfect chance to land a fork on f2. Now, instead of saving his queen, this genius decides to threaten my bishop with his pawn. So I did what any sane person would do. I took his queen. Boom. Justice served. But then, karma arrived early. He immediately threatened my queen with his bishop, and even though I could have taken that bishop, I was too busy celebrating my queen capture like I'd just won the world championship. My brain completely stopped working, and it stayed that way for the rest of the game. So I absent-mindedly moved my knight to f2, and he just casually took my queen.
Psych! No!
And in return, I took his rook, because apparently I'm running a queen for rook exchange offer. Then he takes my pawn on c7 with his bishop. Classic sneak attack. But don't worry, I had a plan, or at least I pretended to. I played bd4, forking his rook and knight, a moment of pure genius that made me feel like a tactical mastermind. Of course, he instantly moved his rook to safety, so I said fine, and took his knight with my bishop. Then, out of nowhere, he captures my pawn on e5 with his bishop. That pawn was protected, so I happily snapped his bishop in return. I was feeling good, until karma returned again. His knight jumps in and hits me with a fork on c7. My face went from confident to confused real quick. I moved my king to d8, trying to act calm, but deep down, I knew my rook was living its final moments. And yep, as expected, boom, he takes my rook. Now, trying to fix the mess I made, I push my pawn to d6, just to open up a path for my bishop to breathe. Then he plays kd2, giving his rook a perfect highway to attack both my bishop and knight. And of course, I had no idea what was coming. Even if I did, let's be honest, I probably wouldn't have done anything smart anyway. One of my pieces was destined to die. I wasn't even paying attention to what he was doing. My full focus was on what I wanted to play. Basically, I was playing solo chess in a 2-player game. So I casually moved my bishop to e6, trying to look like I knew what I was doing. And then, tragedy strikes again. He takes my bishop with his rook. I just stared at the board like, yeah, I totally saw that coming. I didn't. So I quickly moved my knight to safety, trying to save whatever dignity I had left. Then he notices his bishop is under double attack. So he moves it back to safety. Classic retreat before disaster move. At least one of us was playing smart. I decide to bring my king to e7, acting like I'm improving my position. But really, I was just moving pieces because I had no better idea. Then he spots an opportunity and brings his knight out, developing it like a responsible player, something I clearly wasn't doing.
Fact.
Now, here's where my brain truly went on vacation. I looked at his pawn on d3 and thought,
Oh, nice. Free food?
so I jumped in with my knight, fully confident that his king couldn't take it because my other knight was protecting it. Except, surprise, he didn't need his king. He just took my knight with his pawn. I completely forgot that pawns exist. Like, who remembers pawns, right? I just sat there, staring at the board, questioning every life choice that led me to this moment. Frustrated and done with logic, I decided to emotionally trade my bishop, not for position, not for tactics, just for revenge. So I decided to get aggressive again. I played RC8, trying to threaten his knight and look smart for once. But my opponent wasn't impressed. He just casually moved his knight with check, like, nice try, buddy. So I thought, all right, two can play this game. I used my king to threaten his knight in return. And of course, he immediately threatens my knight with his king too. It's like both our kings suddenly forgot their day jobs and started fighting personally. I move my knight to safety. He moves his knight to safety. We basically did a peaceful trade of let's not blunder yet. Now at this point, I had two choices, either trade knights or grab a free pawn. And obviously, my brain said, free pawn equals happiness. And that's when my opponent decided to set up a beautiful trap. Honestly, full respect. It was evil but elegant. First, he calmly moved his king away, and I didn't suspect a thing. Then I pushed my pawn, thinking I was being productive. Next, he plays re1, and I still had no clue what he was plotting. Then, I did the most generous thing ever. I helped him execute his plan by moving my pawn to d4, unknowingly becoming the co-author of my own downfall. Suddenly, boom, he jumps his knight to g4, revealing a discovered check from his rook. And of course, he's now ready to take my free knight too. After that whole disaster, I decided to focus on one goal, push my pawn and finally get something to promote. But man, there were so many random moves after that. If I showed all of them, the video would be longer than a Netflix episode. So let's just say, after all the blunders, misclicks, and emotional damage, I somehow ended up a pawn up. For the first time in the game, I felt like I was winning on purpose. I promoted that pawn into a queen and eventually checkmated him. So the second game begins. I start strong with d4. He responds with e5, and I could have taken his pawn right away. But no, this time I was calm, strategic, and mysterious. Instead of capturing, I played nf3, developing smoothly. He then pushed d6, defending his pawn like a nervous beginner guarding a secret. Then he brought his knight out to attack my pawn, and I coolly defended it with my bishop. Next, he developed his bishop to f5, and I followed up by developing my knight to c3. Because apparently I suddenly remembered what development means. Then he got brave and captured my pawn, and I instantly took it back with my knight. Now, he tried to chase my knight away by pushing f6, but that was a big mistake. Because before he could celebrate, I snatched his knight. Of course, he recaptured mine. Then I decided to turn on attack mode. I pushed e4, hitting his bishop. He moved his bishop to g4, and for some reason, just forgot it was hanging. So, and took it with my queen. Then, for reasons only the universe knows, he played RC8. Anyway, I developed my bishop to C4 because now I was feeling fancy. Next, he tried to get spicy. His knight jumped in and attacked my queen, but I calmly slid my queen to G3, keeping everything under control like a true positional mastermind. Then he tried to attack my bishop with G5, but I was like, no worries, my rook's got your queen now. He quickly moved his queen away, smart choice, and I took the opportunity to move my bishop out to safety. Then he pushed f5, and that's when I paused. I saw this whole situation like a puzzle from a chess tactics book, except I'm usually the wrong answer. I thought, if I take this pawn, he'll recapture with his knight, and then he'll fork my queen and bishop. That's bad. But after that, I can play qg5, and he'll only have two choices, either trade queens or trade his knight for my bishop. And you know what? That actually sounded smart. So I went for it. I took the pawn. He recaptured with his knight, exactly as planned. I followed up with qg5, executing my evil genius plan. Then he takes my bishop with his knight, and I instantly took his knight with my queen. And then it got wild. We both ended up forking each other's queens. Then he plays RG8, aiming straight at my center pawn, like he finally remembered what attacking means. So I calmly decided to castle, just to get my king out of the mess. Next, he pushes A5, probably thinking he's doing something deep and positional. But that's when my inner sniper woke up. I suddenly noticed my bishop on C4 was eyeing his rook on G8, and it was completely free. So, without hesitation, I took it. Boom. Then he brings out his bishop to G7, and I instantly spot a deadly idea. His queen is pinned. If I just bring my rook to E1, I can later play QE7 and checkmate him on the spot. So, of course, I go for it. But turns out, he wasn't born yesterday. He already sensed that danger, which is why he first played BG7, and now he calmly slides his bishop to F6, covering everything. But my brain was fully charged now. I wasn't done. I came up with another diabolical idea. If I can somehow plant my knight on D5, I can fork both his queen and bishop. Only one problem, his pawn on C6 was standing in the way. So I thought, fine, let's bait him. I moved my bishop to D5, pretending to blunder. And he fell for it instantly, captured my bishop like he'd just won the game. But little did he know, he just unlocked my final form. I jumped my knight to D5 and bam, double fork. His queen and bishop both hanging like Christmas ornaments. He tries one last desperate move, QE5, hoping his queen would stay protected by the bishop. But nope, I simply took the bishop first with my knight. Now he brings his king to F7, trying to attack my knight, but it's already too late. I grab his queen, and everything is protected perfectly. Right there, he finally realizes it's over, and he resigns. From blundering everything in Game 1 to serving forks, pins, and checkmates in Game 2, that's what I call character development. If you enjoyed watching my brain buffer in real time, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more beautiful disasters, see you in the next masterpiece of mediocrity.